Aloha. Please kokua and help us reach new viewers by subscribing to our HUOA YouTube page. Look for the red subscribe button on the bottom right. It's free. Your subscription supports our mission to share Uchinanchu Aloha around the world. Also, don't forget to give our videos a thumbs up. Mahalo and yuta surugutu urige sabida. Hey, Pat.
Hey, David. How you
What's
guys all
going on,
doing?
sir? How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Excited to see you on a Wednesday evening. I feel like I've been seeing you quite often this
I
past
know.
3
Last
to
week,
4 weeks,
this
right?
week, over the weekend.
It's been a busy, well, September, for those of you who know us, may know or may not know, September is a busy, busy part of the year for HUOA. We just had our virtual Okinawan festival earlier in the month.
Mhm.
And then we also had the 70th anniversary we just celebrated 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's last week. It's starting
Yeah,
to
so
blend already.
I know you guys, all the ones that did video editing, like yourself, David, you guys did a super job of editing, and I know it's tiring because it's a lot of work. And I want to thank you, Jacob, John, and Chris, and everybody that helped. It's just so wonderful to see that you guys did a program, and it went off very nicely. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually, it takes a whole village because, of course, we had the video editing crew, but there's a lot of thought and is put into from the committee members to put the programming and what the, reaching out to the club membership to get videos. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was
Yes.
very a lot of fun for us. So,
Yeah.
real quick, I just wanted to say hello to everybody out there. Feel free to let us know, where you're tuning in from. And, we would appreciate if you could support us. I think we're just so well over 3,000 followers. But if you could hit the subscribe button, if you're on YouTube, it's on the bottom right-hand side. There's no cost to it, but it does help support and help us spread our message better. And so that would be a big kokua appreciation. And then, if you're able to, we would always love to have, if you enjoy what we're putting out, we try to put out as much video content as we are able to. And so if you go to our HUOA YouTube page, you'll actually find over 100 videos and Yuntaku episodes, all the Yuntaku episodes. It's like DVR, so it's play on demand. So even like the 70th anniversary that just aired, if you missed it, it's a 2 hour long programming packed full of club histories and HOA histories, and even tonight's program is going to be very special. So, if you enjoy all the video content that we're putting out and support our mission, we would love to have your donation. So you can actually go to the description below and find our link to our webpage. And there's a big donate button at the top right, and we would very much appreciate it.
Yeah, just on top of that too. So, I was looking at tonight's program, and I was thinking, wow, I should call all my family and friends and tell them to watch tonight's program. So I'm imploring all of you that are watching right now to actually really call your family and friends and tell them this tonight's program is really special. It goes back 20 years ago to showcase the 50th anniversary of what we did 20 years ago. And there's a lot of history involved. And I think people are going to really enjoy tonight's program. We're not going to do much talking. You're going to be watching the video for like 42 minutes. And after that, we'll come on and kind of like mention something. But um, anyway, I can start the
Very
program.
exciting.
You want me to
Well,
go?
actually, I'll do a quick update. Many
Okay.
of you, again, if you don't receive this purple blast, let us know. Just email the info@hoa.org. We send this out pretty much once a week, and it just lets you know what the Hawaii Okinawa well, HUOA and the Hawaii Okinawa Committee is up to and doing. And so it's one way to kind of find out, and then if you want to get involved, you can find out what's going on too. But of course, this Yuntaku Live, 50 years of hearts together, will be featuring. That we're featuring right now. But we also have information on the World Youth Uchinanchu Association. It's a network of young Uchinanchus who've kind of networked from around the world, and they have a pretty good social media group and network put together to keep us tied together globally and see what the different uchinanchus from around the world are doing. And this is perfect chance to get involved with them because we have the Uchinanchu no Hi coming up next month in October, where we get to see what the uchinanchus around the world are doing. And not only that, though, we have the Uchinanchu Taikai coming up next year. So it's one way that we get to actually connect and see each other, hopefully physically. So also, we have the Give Aloha to Support Hawaii program. This is where you shop at Foodland, and if you could give, if you're shopping there anyway, there's no cost. But if you do share our organization that you're supporting Hawaii United Okinawa Association, you can give this code or just say HUOA, and they'll donate a portion of your food purchases to HUOA. And then last but not least, we also have a survey. Many of you were able to watch the virtual Okinawan Festival. We had over 48,000 views on YouTube and Facebook, and thank you very much to you and around the world. We also were able to reach over, according to KHON, over 300,000 people through KHON, through the week of programming that we've had. There's about 10 different shows. And so a huge reach. We would love to hear your thoughts on what you liked, what you didn't like, your suggestions. So you can go here and take the survey. And all of this is also available on the HUOA website.
Good information, David. Thank you.
And again, the 70th was this just past week. But if you missed it, you can go to HUOA. Just go to YouTube and go to HUOA web. Just search HUOA in YouTube, and then go to the HUOA channel, and then from there you can find the 70th anniversary programming. It's a great programming. Pat actually has a quick message about the 70th.
Yeah. So anyway, for those of you that don't know who I am, I am Pat Miashore, the HUOA 2021 president. So I just want to say thank you to all of you that purchased and picked up our tasty bento to help us celebrate our 70th anniversary last week in the in-virtual program, and we hope you enjoyed it. Also, a shout out, thank you to our committee members, especially chaired by Gail Watanabe and Cheryl Tanaka of Bushichang Club. The planning committee did a lot of preparation and planning for the bento sales and pickup, the programming, getting club videos and editing, and lastly, getting the clubs to turn in their club displays for an all in person viewing at the Okinawa Center in the Chaya when the COVID pandemic subsides and we can meet in person. So we're hoping for that. So tonight's program will take us down memory lane, and I think it'll showcase what happened 20 years ago during our 50th anniversary. So it's kind of like a combination. Tonight is like a prelude, not a prelude, but afterthought of what happened when we did the 70th anniversary. So it's a continuation of last week's program, I think. And anyway, what is really unique is that the fact that 20 years ago, James D. Hill was a president, and his theme was Yui no Kukuru. And in English, it means Uchina spirit with hearts together. And my theme is Chimagukuru Tichi, all hearts unite as one. And it's basically the same thing. So the thinking is the same 20 years ago. So I just want to say that we Okinawans try to work together, but we don't know that we're working together, but we have the same kind of thinking, and it goes on in our type of work. So I hope you guys enjoy the program, and maybe David and I will make some comments at the end. But tonight's program is really interesting. So I encourage all of you to call your family and friends to watch tonight's program, and those of you that can help your grandma or grandpa get on the computer, help them, because I think they're going to enjoy the program. So
yeah, and just a little bit more about the programming tonight. So this video, this 50th anniversary video of HUOA was upon a collaboration of HUOA leaders, volunteers, Hawaii Okinawa TV, and JM Productions The video is titled 50 Years of Hearts Together. It was shown to attendees at the HUOA's 50th anniversary celebration on September 22, 2001. So many of you, probably including myself, probably have never seen this video if you didn't have a chance to attend. The video covers the first 50 years of HUOA history with video footages never seen before by many HUOA members, includes interviews with past leaders including Shinsuke Nakamine, Akira Sakima, Seiyan Hokama, 合ってるかな? Seiyan Hokama, Roy Kaneshiro, and Ken Kiabu, along with recent leaders Ed Kuba, Maurice Yamasato, Jane Serikaku, and Allison Yanagi. So the video reflects the growth of HUOA over the first 50 years. I'm very excited, Pat.
Yeah, so am I. I just watched a little clip of it that you showed me and said, "Oh, that don't look familiar," but I know some of the faces. And unfortunately, for those of you that are watching, half of these people are not with us today, but it brings a lot of memories that this is what they did in the past, and it shows the spirit still lives on in today's Uchinanchu people. So yeah.
Definitely. And then before I start, I just want to do a quick shout out to Karen Takara. Thank you very much for joining us. And then Gwen Fujiya says Kailua in the house. And also Minami no Shima from hello, I'm watching from Hawaii Okinawa, and she was saying or she or he is saying a little wind is blowing in Okinawa because of Typhoon Glaze. So hopefully everybody stays safe over there. But again, without further ado, 50 years of Hearts Together, celebrating the 50 years of HUOA 50th
Going down
anniversary.
memory lane.
Memory lane, going down memory lane. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, please enjoy.
April 1945. The U.S. Army showers Okinawa and its neighboring islands with bombs. American soldiers hit the shores of the islands, hunting down Japanese soldiers hiding out in caves and in the homes of innocent Okinawan civilians. Many residents escaped to the north, taking shelter in caves, scavenging for food at night. When the fighting ended in June of 1945, more than 120,000 Okinawans lay dead. Others starved to death or died of illness. Okinawa was in shambles. In Hawaii, information on the conditions in Okinawa was limited to newspaper reports.
When Taro Higa, a local Nisei, came back and told us what really happened in Okinawa, no food, no shelter, they needed help. So this is when some community leaders started to gather clothing and pharmaceuticals. So we all got together and we put up a tent and we gathered clothes and we shipped clothes from Camp Ford Road. First it was at Jikoen, but it got too small.
Jikoen Temple was the setting for many Okinawan community efforts, including the one that would forever bond the two island communities of Uchinanchu.
Well, about 150 volunteers every day, We get to, some people, they get pick up our clothing and shoes, whatever, they donate, Purugini, and some amending and sorting and something. In the meantime, we have to get a donation for the luncheon for 150 people every single day, about 3 weeks.
According to Shinsuke Nakamine, volunteers at Jikoen filled 1,350 casket-sized cases with clothing, shoes, medical and school supplies, and other basic necessities to help their Uchinanchu cousins through their bleakest hour. Maui volunteers gathered in 1945 to collect and pack clothing for war-torn Okinawa. By February 1946, 151 tons of clothing had been collected throughout the territory and shipped to Okinawa. The U.S. Navy pitched in and transported the goods to Okinawa. But Okinawa was also in dire need of food. The war had claimed not only human lives, but thriving vegetable patches and livestock as well. When word of the situation in Okinawa reached the ears of Hawaii Uchinanchu and other compassionate non-Okinawans, the two joined forces to raise money to buy livestock, pigs and milking goats, to send to Okinawa. They knew the animals would reproduce and continue to be a source of livelihood for the people.
The mothers needed milk for their babies. At that time, food wasn't that plentiful. And this is why they wanted to have milk goats, the milk for the mothers to feed the babies.
In 1948, 7 Hawaii Uchinanchu men sailed to Oregon to take possession of 550 pigs they had purchased with donations from the community. From Oregon, they sailed to Okinawa, battling rough seas. A year later, 10 Hawaii men sailed for San Francisco in 2 groups to pick up a total of 700 milking goats and accompany them to Okinawa aboard a military chartered ship. Akira Sakima was asked to join the second group.
We had to milk the goats twice a day, because if you don't milk it twice a day, the goats get fever and they become sick. And the ocean was rough, and most of us got sick, especially me. I had to hug the goats and milk with one hand because it was so rough, and I can't take the ocean. And when we reached Okinawa, which was about 12 days, we were so happy to see the Okinawans on the pier waiting for us. And you saw people walking around with baskets on their head, the women. So really, your heart goes out to them.
The army unloaded the goats and handled their distribution to the civilian population, but the work was only beginning for Akira Sakima. Before leaving Hawaii, he had collected some cash, dollars that Hawaii Uchinanchu had dropped off at his Kalihi Valley home.
None of them gave monies for their relatives in Japan. And when I mean money, it's not $10, $20. It was $2, $3, $5. And even at that, I had about $2,000 in money to give to relatives. They knew that their relatives were in need. So they said, please, give it to them when you see them. So I made every effort.
That one mission to Okinawa changed Akira Sakima's life forever.
Up to that point, only is what we heard from our mothers and our fathers. But when I went there and I saw how they lived and who they were, the relatives and so forth, my interest became greater. You know, it's after that I think that my feeling for Okinawa changed. Hey, that's part of us there.
Nearly 4 decades later, when the United Okinawan Association embarked on its fundraising campaign to build the Hawaii Okinawa Center, Sakima was asked to go to Okinawa to seek support from the people.
People about our age of that time, which was about 60 years old, 65, they say, we can't forget you people. So they were now, at that point, they were middle management or executive. So they donated. They told me, yeah, we're going to donate because you folks helped us when we really needed help. It really brought tears to our eyes.
The end of World War II left Okinawa under U.S. occupation and jurisdiction. Committed to continue aiding their cousins in Uchina, many Hawaii Issei and Kibe Nisei began talking about forming an organization of Okinawans that could work with the American government, while also bringing together Okinawans in Hawaii, not as people from one area of Okinawa, but from all over Uchina. The task was a big one. There had been several attempts to establish an Okinawan organization, but all were short-lived, oftentimes hampered by their differences. Until September 1951, when Issei and Kibe Nisei, like Kamesuke Nakamura and other Uchinanchu, decided it was time to get serious, with the establishment of the Hawaii Okinawa Kenjin Rengokai, the United Okinawan Association of Hawaii, made up of 14 member groups.
HUOA, we need HUOA Okinawa people. We have to have, so everybody heart together. We build up HUOA with Dr. Kiba. Yeah? Everyone together. We need. They all time they fight. Never can get together. Yeah? I was the one that stopped the fighting all time. If you were all time like this, yeah? Okinawa people never get together. I asked them, you want we do again like you follow? They said no. Well, we thinking about make Okinawa group together. So we start Sonjinkai. Yeah? Sonjinkai. And then Sonjinkai people pick up one and join to the HUOA. See? Hey, no more higher than everybody equal.
The member clubs tended to the needs of people who had come from the same town and village in Okinawa, enjoying the fellowship of Shimanchu at yearly New Year's Shinnen Enkai and summer picnics. And in times of need and sorrow, members supported and assisted each other. The establishment of the United Okinawan Association had its benefits for the clubs. Information coming from Okinawa went directly to the HUOA.
If you have joined the HUOA, then easier to contact Okinawa too, see, through the organization. That's more like official, you see.
In the aftermath of the war and during a period of American occupation directed by USCAR, the U.S. Civil Administration of the UQ Islands, concerned for the welfare of their families in Okinawa by a strong organization made up of Americans of Okinawan ancestry, made a United Okinawan Association all the more vital. But Takamine says the organizers of the United Okinawan Association never in their wildest dreams imagined that the organization would ever be as large or as active as is today's HUOA. The HUOA made the move early to conduct its meetings in English rather than Japanese, which helped draw in young Nisei and Sansei. With USCAR funding, many Okinawans were able to come to Hawaii and the mainland United States on a national leadership program to attend American colleges and universities, to observe American business, and even to gain hands-on experience in farming and fishing. And whenever they passed through Hawaii, no matter what hour of the day, representatives of HUOA were always there to greet their fellow Uchinanchu.
So we're taking care of all those people, you see. Even myself, my memory correct, over 3,000 people we took care. And those days all use Hickam Air Base, not civil advance. So we have to midnight, 12 o'clock, we wake up and meet them, pick them up, and take to Waikiki Hotel, you know, and then following morning we get up early. And then we take them all city tour and like that. In the evening we have party.
HUOA member clubs were notified whenever Okinawans from the same hometown or village of their issei would be in Honolulu. Many attended welcome parties organized by the HUOA. As an organization, the HUOA always looked out for the welfare of Uchina's people. For that, Takamine says Okinawa was always grateful.
Oh yes, they always said that without the HUOA, hard to communicate people outside and especially Hawaii. They most felt appreciation after war relief, reconstruction period. They helped so much, not financially but spiritually.
Warren Higa saw death and destruction in Okinawa firsthand. As an American soldier who was part of the U.S. forces that went ashore on Okinawa on April 1st, 1945. In 1961-62, during his term as president of the United Okinawan Association, Warren Higa found himself in a position to help Okinawans get back on their feet, thanks to programs funded by USCAR.
Bringing over farmers, young farmers, to learn how to do vegetable farming, poultry, piggery, not cane field or pineapple now, just individual farming type.
As the years progressed, more and more clubs saw the benefit of joining the United Okinawan Association. The HUOA kept the member clubs informed through several means, through mailed correspondence and through the media. USCAR also sent Okinawan students to the University of Hawaii to learn English and their own area of study.
Okinawans in Hawaii try to represent America in the best light, right? And try to encourage them, use the American resources while the Americans are there. And that, to me, was the most important message that we could probably give to Okinawans there. Take advantage of their presence there.
But the United Okinawan Association did not exist to serve only the people from Okinawa. Its focus was also the home front, Hawaii. In 1957-58, the UOA introduced a college graduates testimonial dinner.
We sponsor every June graduation night for college graduates, University of Hawaii, and from those from the mainland. Honor them and their parents at this function at one YMCA. When they announce the name of the graduate, they call up the parents and doko doko son. So the parents are so proud and happy to be recognized. To me, that was our biggest contribution toward education, you might say so.
In time, conditions began to improve in Okinawa, which remained under U.S. occupation. Naha City, which had been obliterated in the Battle of Okinawa, underwent massive reconstruction. Throughout this period, the UOA leaders were invited to visit Okinawa on friendship missions. In 1964, UOA President Seiyan Hokama received an invitation to visit Okinawa. There, he met with Chief Executive Seiho Matsuoka, USCAR-appointed leader of the Okinawan civilian population.
So I requested some kind of gift for Hawaii's Okinawa 80 years old people. So-called, we had a Bonen Kai and Keiro Kai, the honoring elders. So I had a 300 gift from Mr. Matsuoka. So we really enjoyed it.
In the years that followed, the nature of relations between Hawaii and Okinawa transitioned from relief assistance to Okinawa to expressions of love through Okinawan culture. The culture of Okinawa was highlighted in cultural jubilees sponsored by the UOA. Okinawa supported the effort by sending many of its dance masters to Hawaii to perform in music and dance programs for their Hawaii cousins. The 1970s was highlighted by Okinawa's reversion to governance by Japan and continued development. On the home front, the UOA continued to grow. 1980 marked a major turning point in the history of the United Okinawan Association, when close to 40 Sansei Okinawans were invited to visit their ancestral homeland by Governor Junji Nishime. When cultural historians look back on the history of the UOA, this 2-week visit to Okinawa could stand out as the catalyst for today's Hawaii United Okinawa Association. For young Okinawans like Ken Kiabu, who the following year became the first Sansei to serve as president of the organization, the journey to Okinawa ignited the kind of energy, excitement, and enthusiasm that continues to bear fruit even today, 2 decades later.
A lot of the members came back so motivated, and they got involved in their own Sonjin-kais, they got involved in the UOA. I think this was really the start of the UOA blossoming, because as we started with all this enthusiasm, they got their friends involved, and so we got more people involved, and so I think the group, the circle got larger, and this is why I think the UOA burst into the community. I mean, the Niseis worked hard, and then I think things just kind of stayed status quo for a while, and then after this trip, we got rejuvenated, and so things changed, and bringing all this young new blood in, I think, really helped the organization.
The key to UOA was turning over leadership to the younger guys. I think that's the biggest step they could have done to expand the organization.
And it all began with that trip. Not all of the young people were initially thrilled about going on the trip, recalls 1981 UOA president Ken Kiabu. For a few, their parents or their Sonjin-kai had submitted their name, and they were selected. But as the trip progressed, as they learned about how Okinawa had come to be, about its history, its economy, its culture, as the warm smiles and generosity of Okinawa's people began to penetrate their hearts, as they walked the land that had once been home to their own grandparents, something began to change.
For about 3 days, we all had to go to our own families and live with them. And most of us didn't speak Japanese or didn't know much Japanese. And so they were very apprehensive about going and staying with their relatives, and even I was, because I couldn't speak Japanese. But after the third day, when they came back in the hotel, you couldn't stop them from talking. And they came back with so much omiyage. But I don't think just the omiyage was the thing was that they got to meet their relatives, they ate the food, they learned about their roots, and they came back so enthusiastic. I mean, it was like night and day.
When Ken Kiabu was installed as the UOA's 1981-82 president, his fellow officers were all Sansei, who had just a few months earlier been part of that first leadership group to visit Okinawa.
We started the Uchinanchu paper. We thought that we need to get some kind of a newsletter out so that we can inform the members. And the HUOA Makaala used to have their, softball games and stuff, and that kind of dwindled down. And so we started to revive the sports program like softball and volleyball and stuff.
The level of enthusiasm was simply amazing. From that trip was born the young Okinawans of Hawaii, who brought to the United Okinawan Association new ideas and perspectives, tremendous energy, and a new commitment to ensuring that the cultural heritage of the Okinawan people would live on. Today, one of the most visible expressions of Uchinanchu pride is the Okinawan Festival, an event that was inspired by that 1980 trip to Okinawa by Hawaii Sansei. UOA President Roy Kaneshiro saw the festival as a way of bringing together all of the UOA member clubs. Like anything new and untested, some people were initially apprehensive.
But once we felt that we decided that we're going with the festival, and everybody just pitched in and worked really hard to make it a success.
Stanley Takamine, who had served as 1979-80 UOA president, agreed to chair the event, which, in its own humble way, said so much about the beauty of the Okinawan spirit and of the value of working together. Kaneshiro says the first Okinawan festival was more than just an attempt to replicate an event held in Okinawa. It was the result of the encouragement of the Issei and Nisei generation and the leadership of the UOA, who gave the 1980 group the opportunity to retrace the steps of the immigrant pioneers. As the Okinawan festival unfolds each year, Roy Kaneshiro remembers one moment in September 1982 that made all the anxiety and hard work worthwhile.
This elderly Issei, and she came up to us and she had told us, at this point in her life, being kind of old and, not in really good health, she knew, she could never go back to Okinawa. So to see something like this, in Hawaii, she was really happy. The first festival, being, at Makui Pavilion, it seemed so small compared to, today's one at, Kapilani Park. And I don't think, any of us really realized, that it would have grown, to this proportion. But, I think all of us, who were involved in the first festival, feel good about the whole thing, how it's grown and how important it's becoming to the community.
For Roy Kaneshiro's father, Akibe Nisei, seeing his son get involved in the Uchinanchu community was like watching him being reborn.
Before that, only just I'm Okinawa. That's all. Mostly Okinawa. About Okinawa, he don't know. Yeah. After that, he president, all people together. Aside, he know. He find out Okinawa is good, and my grandfather them, he came to Hawaii. He worked hard.
To me, one of the most important things is that people, they're not ashamed to say, I'm Okinawan. Even the young people now, I listen to them when you ask them, what are you? They don't just say, I'm Japanese, they say, I'm Okinawan. Of course, first we're Americans. But I think also the older, the Niseis and some of the Isseis, they were, I think after all, they didn't want to say that they were Okinawan. But now I think everybody's proudly walks and says, I'm Okinawan.
The only missing element in this emergence of Uchinanchu pride and community-wide involvement through the UOA was a place the community could really call home. For decades, the Okinawa Memorial Hall at the Jikoen Honganji Temple had served as a gathering place for Hawaii's Uchinanchu. But the community had grown by leaps and bounds. The dream of building an Okinawan Cultural Center had been a dream for many years, at least from the late 1970s, when then Governor Junji Nishime stopped in Hawaii on his way back to Okinawa from South America. Why, he asked, did Hawaii not have a cultural center? After all, the first Okinawan immigrants had settled in Hawaii. So in the early 1980s, Uchinanchu architect Maurice Yamasato was asked to come up with plans for an Okinawan cultural center. He met with several community leaders, among them Peter Iha, Albert Teruya, and Stanley Takamine, to assess the community's needs. From those discussions came Yamasato's first plans for a center. But the plans for a center never went beyond the drawing board.
In 1985 or thereabouts, I went to Okinawa and I visited certain of our friends in Okinawan government officials. And again, I mentioned the idea of an Okinawan Center here in Hawaii. Our closest friend in Okinawa at the time, Kamesuke Nakamura, longtime president for the Hawaii Club in Okinawa, said, hey, you guys come over here year after year and you're talking about building a center, nothing happens. The people here in Okinawa are starting to think that you folks are all mouth, no action. And that shocked me.
Kuba came back to Hawaii and began talking with Stan Takamine and Gary Mijo, who agreed to co-chair the project. Maurice Yamasato's drawings were rolled out on the table again, and George Uema began working on the center's design and construction. When Edward Kuba's term as HUOA president ended in 1987, he turned right around and assumed the role of fundraising chair. On March 16, 1989, the United Okinawan Association broke ground on the 2 1/2 acre parcel on which the Hawaii Okinawa Center today stands. There was no turning back now on the dream for a home that would honor the sacrifices and fortitude of the Okinawan Issei. January 7, 1990. In Hawaii, the Okinawan community opened the celebration marking the 90th anniversary of Okinawan immigration to Hawaii by honoring their past. 90 years earlier, 26 immigrants had come ashore in this new land after nearly 10 days at sea. Tens of thousands of immigrants from the islands of Okinawa followed in their footsteps. Life was harsh and oftentimes so lonely, but they sacrificed and persevered. In the rich, warm soil of Hawaii, they planted sugarcane and new family roots. From the get-go, the year 1990 had been targeted as the year the doors to the Hawaii Okinawa Center would open to the community. Until that day, they worked at a feverish pace. In Hawaii, the center was seen as a magnet for not just the Okinawan community, but as a much-needed facility that was welcomed in the Gentry Waipio area. The icing on the cake was the commitment of Hawaii's First Lady at the time, Lynn Kobashigawa Waihee, a Sansei of Okinawan ancestry, to serve as honorary chair of the project.
Our small group of half a dozen people grew to 10, 15, 20, up until we got about 500 people involved. The timing of the center was perfect in a lot of respects. The center was built in memory of the Isseis. And the Niseis had the money, the Sanseis had the organizational skills. So the Niseis and the Sanseis together with the money and the expertise needed for the center built something in memory of their ancestors, the Isseis.
Kuba says the Okinawan community was strong. After some 5 years of having organized highly successful Okinawan festivals, the United Okinawan Association was up to the challenge. When the campaign came to a close, Hawaii's Uchinanchu community and their friends had shown their support to the tune of $9 million. According to Kuba, 98% of those who had pledged money to the project made good on their promise. Meanwhile, the Hawaii Okinawa Center was taking shape. Even when it had been just a drawing on paper, Yamasato had wanted to have kawada tile grace the roof of the building. But the cost of the kawada far exceeded the construction budget, so Yamasato resigned himself to using American tile.
When I presented a problem about not being able to have the kawada because of cost item, Mr. Takehiro Ishikawa from Maru Sangyo Company, stood up in this audience and said, they'll come up and donate the tile to Hawaii. And this is the tile that we have right now on the building, and that's the so-called the material that really represents Okinawa and gives the feeling of the whole complex being Okinawa Culture Center.
But if there was anything more heartwarming than the desire of Hawaii's Uchinanchu to honor their Issei ancestors, it was the desire of the people of Okinawa to support the people who had supported them in their darkest hour.
The people that benefited from that through the decades were then in the 1980s, 1990s in positions of power and responsibility. They're the ones that remembered what Hawaii did for Okinawa. And what Hawaii did for Okinawa in those several years after the war, Okinawans have spent a lifetime repaying.
The first $150,000 from Okinawa came from one of the founders of the HUOA, Kamesuke Nakamura. Gracing the Hawaii Okinawa Center complex are two gardens that complement each other. The Issei Garden, honoring the community's rich past, and the Takakura Garden, symbolizing its present and the future. Both gardens are kept beautifully maintained by a corps of dedicated volunteers. People like retired school principal George Nakasone. Like so many of the center's volunteers, Nakasone says spending time working in the garden is his way of remembering and honoring a generation that sacrificed so much for people like him.
Not only my parents, but all the Isseis that I have known throughout my lifetime. Recalling those days when getting together with them, not fully realizing what they have done to contribute to our quality of life.
Ironically, the Hawaii Okinawa Center, probably Yamasato's most public and visible project as a practicing architect, was a labor of love, done in the spirit of Yui no Kukuru, Uchinanchu's spirit with hearts together.
I think because of the effort of the community and their involvement in the design, we got a structure that everybody's proud of. Not only myself, I feel like it belongs to the community and everybody had an input in it. And this is the result of it.
On June 16, 1990, a light drizzle fell over the Hawaii Okinawa Center, a Hawaiian blessing for the new home of the United Okinawan Association and Hawaii's Okinawan community. The dream was now a reality. Close to 5,000 people, local Uchinanchu, as well as supporters from Okinawa, came to help open the doors of their new home. The day was made even sweeter by the presence of many Issei, whose struggles and sacrifices were the cornerstone of the beautiful center. Edward Kuba remembers the day.
I walked onto the premises, hurrying to get to the grand opening, and I saw the 4,000 to 5,000 people that had gathered to attend the facilities, and I finally looked up at the center and said, where did this thing come from? And the past 4 or 5 years before that, I was just too busy to really appreciate what we were doing. And then seeing the center for the first time, grand opening, I said, whoa, this is really beautiful. It was worthwhile. The challenge that we had undertaken, we met.
For architect Maurice Yamasato, the morning began bittersweet. In 1987, when the center was still a dream, but a dream closer than it had ever been to becoming reality, his father, Toshio Yamasato, had picked out a special Okinawan pine tree out of the hundreds he nurtured at his home on Kauai. This matsu is for the Hawaii Okinawa Center, he told Maurice. Toshio Yamasato never lived to see his special matsu take root at the Hawaii Okinawa Center.
The morning of the opening, I just came here by myself about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was looking at the pine tree and the center, and kind of teary-eyed because it looked so beautiful, and to think that my dad donated the pine tree.
At his father's funeral, the minister had told Maurice that anytime he saw a butterfly flying around, it symbolized his dad.
All of a sudden, there was a butterfly that came fluttering around me, that I couldn't help but have tears in my eyes to think that, yeah, Dad's right here, sharing this moment with me.
The opening of the Hawaii Okinawa Center did indeed draw in the Okinawan community for cultural and organizational activities. In 1991, Isaac Hokama, a sansei whose father had served as the organization's president nearly 3 decades earlier, became the first HUOA president installed at the Hawaii Okinawa Center. Although mortgage-free, the HUOA now had a building that would have to be maintained, and that required money. Hokama initiated HUOA's first fundraising craft fairs. In 1993, the United Okinawan Association took a giant leap forward with the installation of Jane Serikaku, a public school principal, as its first woman president.
I was asked to consider being president of the United Okinawan Association, not as the first female president, but just as president of the organization.
Serikaku says there was support from all segments of the community. As her year as president progressed, she and her advisors recognized a void among the new Sansei and Yonsei club leaders. The HUOA organized several workshops, from which 8 guiding principles, fundamental beliefs relating to the United Okinawan Association, came forth.
We needed to have common beliefs, common understanding before we could go further, and that became what was guiding us in our plans for the year and subsequent years after that.
Fundamental to HUOA's future was the strength of its member clubs. If the clubs were strong, so too would the HUOA be strong. Also vital to the HUOA's future was a need to nurture, trust, and continually involve young people in the organization. Serikaku had witnessed the bounty of the HUOA's decision in 1981 to trust in its young.
The people who went on that first tour, the first leadership tour, they came back very, very excited, and they looked for things that they could contribute.
Serikaku decided to reinvent the program. The new Leadership Study Tour represented a partnership between the HUOA, the member clubs, and the young prospective leader.
The first group that I took over to Okinawa, they became the leaders, not only of their own clubs, but of HUOA. And then the next group that I took, they're now very involved. And what we have done was to continue to keep them involved.
In 1995, the United Okinawan Association adopted a new name, the Hawaii United Okinawa Association. Veteran K-Zoo radio host Keiko Ura has watched the Hawaii United Okinawa Association blossom over the decades. Now 51 member clubs strong, she says the future rests in good hands.
1世が頑張ってそれを2世が見事に受け継いで、そしてそれからアメリカンシティズンでしょ。もう3世4世に2世のお父さんお母さんがしっかりと教えてくださって、そして今は若いリーダーがヤング沖縄スタディトアもういろいろありますでしょう。だからフューチャーリーダーがもう continue もう全然心配なく。
Here we are exactly 100 years later.
Okinawans have been in Hawaii for over a century now. While the 2000 centennial celebration honored the past, it also marked the passing of the torch to the younger generation, to people like 27-year-old Yonsei Allison Yanagi.
I don't know exactly why I understood that I was Okinawan, but ever since I was a child, I always knew that I was Okinawan for some reason. And I attribute a lot of that knowledge or that consciousness to my grandparents, especially my grandmother.
Yanagi visited Okinawa for the first time while a student at the University of Hawaii on an exchange program with the University of the Ryukyus. Her month-long visit opened up a new world to her and led to several more and longer periods of study and observation.
It was one of the most influential experiences in my entire life because the people that I met there, the experiences that I had, really, I guess, just affected me in a way that I never thought I could be affected.
Her childhood introduction to Okinawan culture led her decision to study Okinawan dance, which led to sanshin lessons, and then kucho.
I became so involved with the performing arts aspect of it that I wanted to know more about just Okinawa in general, the history, the religion, the politics, everything. because I knew Okinawa wasn't just Okinawa. Even though Okinawa is just a prefecture of Japan, it's very obvious that Okinawa is not anything like the rest of Japan. And I wanted to know what those differences were and why they were there.
Yanagi's need to know about Okinawa has led her to pursue Okinawa as a scholarly endeavor at the University of Hawaii, where, much to her disappointment, there was very little for her to choose from. She has returned to the University of Hawaii's Manoa campus, working towards her master's in Asian studies, with an emphasis on Okinawa. Yanagi is hoping to find answers to some of the disparities she finds between what she is learning in the classroom and what she is experiencing in her own life.
Things that I learned from them were very different from the things that my grandparents taught me. And because there was such a chasm between what was going on in scholarship and what was going on in my own family, I felt that there was a need to bridge these two sides.
In young people like Allison Yanagi, we entrust the future of the Hawaii United Okinawa Association.
Last year, before I left for Okinawa, I spent about a week just videotaping my grandmother. And I did it with the intention of saving something for me, but also perhaps leaving something for my own children or my grandchildren to see. And even though my grandmother is a Kibei Nisei, in many respects, she's still very Issei because she identifies, I think, probably more with Okinawa than she ever did with the United States. And I want my family to remember that. My grandfather, who passed away, you know, I never got the chance to videotape him. But when I was in high school, I wrote one of my papers about him, and he told me stories about what it was like to live on the plantation. And I guess the biggest lesson I took from everything that my grandparents told me was that they suffered so much so that I could have everything that I have now. But their happiness is that I'm so successful. And I think I want everybody to realize that if it weren't for all the suffering and all the tribulations that the Issei went through, none of us would be here now. And I think it's spectacular how successful, you know, the third and fourth generation Okinawans are. But if it weren't for the Issei instilling in us a certain pride, a tremendous work ethic, this idea of unity, none of us would be where we are. We wouldn't have the Kaikang, we wouldn't have the HUOA. And I think the one thing I would like people to remember is that Okinawans did it because they were a group. It was a bunch of individuals who worked as a group. It wasn't just one person, it wasn't just a group of people, it was everybody contributing.
Wow.
Wow.
Wasn't that a good show?
That blew me away, Pat.
Yeah. I looked at it and said, wow, that really happened like 20 years ago, yes. So I kind of recall it, but it's all new to me now. I'm glad I saw it, that feeling of being Uchiranchu came out at the very beginning when Mr. who was that? Oh, I forget the guy's name already. Mr. Nakamura. Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Nakamura,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
He just said, we all you fella, you talk about pidgin English. He talked about let's work together, and I think that's where it all began. You got to work together, otherwise you guys gonna fight. I don't think what happened. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. This is all new to me because I've only been living in Hawaii since 2006, and so this is, I mean, completely new to me.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
just wonderful to see. My observation. How I got involved was, when I went, very similar to many of the leadership tour members. I went to Okinawa, and that's how I got inspired. But then you work with community members involved in HUOA, and everybody's just so passionate and then gives their all best just to help the organization and the community strive. And so it's just great to see that it's been kind of going on, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when the Kaikan was built, and yeah, it's just wonderful to see how that story became. So, wow.
You know what? You know what really got to me is that when the guy said, we're trying to pass this on to the third Sansei generation and get the new leadership from them, and I'm thinking about, oh my God, I'm Nisei, I'm the older generation, and although I'm a young Nisei, but I still think, wow, because I don't know too many of the new things that you guys know, the computer thing and all that, but so kind of a step back because I was watching the program. I think my mom uh, attended all of those events and she really appreciated the fact that she could watch the opening of the Okinawa Center, and
Wow.
she totally enjoyed it. Yeah, yeah.
I kind of saw a recurring theme, that the one, many of the members in 1980, young members went um, to Okinawa, and that's how they got involved. A lot of the Sansei started getting involved, and then Isaac Kokama mentioned in the 90s that turning over to the young generation is when
Mhm.
HUA started blossoming. So I keep thinking to myself, I feel like we're still kind of in the same mindset where we're trying to get the young generation
Yes.
involved, and just sitting in a couple of committees of are even younger than myself, a younger generation than myself, still continuing to help out, put the programming together for Ide no Hi and even
Mhm.
this upcoming Uchinanchu no Hi. I feel like I think we're in good hands. I don't know what you think about that, Pat.
No, I think we're in good hands. You know why? I'm thinking the younger generation, we're getting them involved because of their knowledge of the computer, and they do it so fast. I mean, they can type out agendas, they can type out things, and like I watched oh wow, it would take me like 2 hours just to complete an agenda. They use it in a flash. In 10 minutes, it's all done already. It's like, but I think, but because they know how to do the computer, I think we need to rely on them because in the past, a lot of people say, "Hey, we gotta get history. We gotta get this place. We gotta get this thing recorded so that people can know." And we're doing it now with Juntaku Live because which you and Lynn involved last year. I think it's a wonderful program that just evolved, and I think, wow, you guys did it just out of the whim because where it was in a COVID pandemic, but it serves its purpose because people from all over the world can watch it, and not only that, it goes on YouTube and it kind of stays there forever. And we were watching the beginning of new performing arts groups or performing arts group coming, and they're telling their story how they began, and I think it's a wonderful way of telling people, hey, you want to know history? Go on YouTube and go watch all these programs because it comes on channel 53 on a regular basis. And although we don't have a set program for it, but if you go to channel 53 and you kind of search the channels, you might catch it. And then even though you watched it one time, you watch it again, and you learn a few things, and that's what I've been doing. So for those of you that don't know what to do and you don't want to watch regular TV, go channel 53 or go surf the internet and go watch all the YouTube programs, because you're gonna learn a lot. And if you want to learn about history, that's the way to do it. And for you younger generation, I totally understand that you guys are like getting involved with creating website, and that's what we need. We need to have the younger generation come in, so you guys can create the website, and us old guys can tell you what to do.
And, Pat, I think it's also great that I think the younger generation could also use a little nudge, and I like how you get many of your grandkids involved to be committee members to help put up with some of these. So I think have some encouragement from the grandparents is always helpful.
Yeah.
And it's just one way to connect with your younger generation, your grandkids, and maybe they can show you how to do some of these. Being able to watch on YouTube and so forth. So wow, I think very much important
Yeah.
for those
I'm
of
always
you out
asking them
there.
questions. Hey, how you do this? How you command save? How you do that? So they tell me, Grandpa, just do this. And oh, okay.
Yeah, man, and just this reoccurring theme of young people going to Okinawa on leadership tours, or even the
Mhm.
Taikai, and how they get to just their passion ignites when they visit Okinawa, meet their relatives, see the culture, and come back and wanting to get involved. I feel like that's something that's so important that maybe that's something that we gotta take a look at and consider maybe doing a leadership tour again. I feel like we haven't done it in a while, but wow,
Well, not only that, but I think just watching this video, the one we just
mhm.
presented tonight, is a show. It just tells you what happened in Okinawa, the Battle of Okinawa, and basically that's how it all started, where the United Okinawan Association was formed because of the support that they gave to their homeland, and it just created like uh, when I was chairman of some things, I said, you throw a pebble in the water and you watch the wave just go and spread out. Yeah. So, basically that's what's happening. Yeah. You throw a pebble in the water and the thing just has a ripple effect, and it just creates a bigger wave, and it just goes on and on. So I think that's how the Okinawa survive. And I think that it's going to continue that way.
Pat, you know what works even better than that? You just get a handful of pebbles and throw them all in the puddle at the same time.
Create a big tidal wave. Yeah.
big tidal wave. And I just want to shout out to Gwen. What a wonderful Allison Yanagi brought me to tears. She was so young, but she knew the value of our Issei and honoring the generation. Very heartwarming. And I feel like she's still very young.
I did all that too, because I
Mhm.
was kind of emotional on that part too, because I could feel my I could feel basically. I think everybody has their own feeling of what their grandparents were like, what their parents were like, and so yeah, it brought out a few emotional effects on that. So I could see where she was coming from. Thank you,
Tristan,
Allison.
Tristan, thank you for tuning in from Waianae. Carolyn Ozaki from Kaka'ako. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope, wow, I hope you were heartwarmed. I was, and I hope you learned something new about our Okinawan community and HUOA. Although we were watching the 50th anniversary that was aired in 2001, we are celebrating 7 years of Hawaii United Okinawa Association this year. So,
Mhm.
man, cheers to another 20 years, 10, 20 years.
Well, we only got 5 more years, 4 more years to the 75th, and I think we
Yeah.
should have a real bang
Another
up
big,
performance on that.
big
Yeah.
milestone anniversary. Yeah, very excited.
Hopefully COVID will be subside. We'll have a big celebration, and plus, I think maybe we can do it both ways: yeah, virtual and a
Yeah,
big
yeah, yeah,
celebration.
yeah, yeah. I think so. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, Pat, man, what a show! I thought this was a great way to just kind of remind us of, what makes our Hawaii Okinawan community. So, hope you
So
enjoyed
vibrant.
it. I
Yep.
very much so, and it was very, very educational for me. And I hope you viewers did as well too.
Yes. I hope all of you told your family to watch it, because it's an inspirational thing to watch, and it kind of brings back memories from the past, and yeah, so it was very very heartwarming to watch. Um, Chimigukuru
and then
Tichi. Yeah.
yeah, Chimugukuru Tichi. And then again, if you missed it, if you were trying to let somebody know, again, you just got to go to YouTube, search HUOA or Hawaii United Okinawa Association. You can watch all the shows,
Yes.
100 plus shows or so. So enjoy it when you have time, and it's a great learning experience. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you,
Tristan,
everybody.
thank you from Waianae.
Mahalo.
My girlfriend is Okinawan and found her family on the OGSH database after watching a previous Yuntaku episode. That's
Oh,
amazing. Guys,
OGS,
wow,
yeah.
that's
OGSH
exactly
was a
what we're looking to
wonderful
do.
program.
So that's
I thought their
wonderful.
membership would increase after that show. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, guys. Again, Yuntaku Live. We're on every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, so please tune in. We'll check you guys out later. Pat,
Yeah.
have a great
Thank you.
evening. Everybody out
You
there,
too.
great evening.
Mahalo.
Mahalo ya.
Nihe debiru.
Penife debiru.
And what? Yuta saragutu.